everyone. Welcome to the Construction Record Podcast. I'm digital media Warren Frey, and as always on Wednesdays, I have with me
Lindsay Cole, DCN and JOC editor.
And we just came off a long weekend, and boy, do we have a whole lot of news from Ontario for you that is still ongoing. So expect it to be out of date by the time this goes out tomorrow. So why don't you start us off with what exactly transpired over the weekend, which we predicted would happen to ourselves.
Yes. Just to give context, coming off of vacation as well for me. So it was always interesting to see how they managed to break these massive news items over a long weekend. I don't think it's a coincidence, but nonetheless.
No, absolutely not.
As we probably all were expecting, the Minister of Municipal Affairs and Housing, Steve Clark, is now the former Minister of Municipal Affairs and Housing, as he resigned on September 4th, I believe it was. So just on Labor Day there. In the wake of the two reports that came out basically slamming the way the Greenbelt lands were dispersed, if you will. So, it's an ongoing story. And to add to his resignation, which I don't think is necessarily that shocking, there's also a cabinet shuffle. So we've got a new housing minister, Paul Calandra is his name. And as a result, news just broke Tuesday morning about how there will be a complete review and reevaluation of Greenbelt development. With that said, that does not mean that there will not be any building taking place while this review is underway on the Greenbelt. So it's a little bit of a interesting caveat, I guess you could say. But there will be quite a review undertaken because Doug Ford, during his press conference, said that that he recognizes that the process to make changes to the Greenbelt, quote, could have been better. The process should have been better.
Now, is this an internal review? Because the Auditor General already kind of reviewed it, didn't she?
Yeah, no, this is the minister himself, well, obviously staff and whatnot, are going to spend some weeks working with officials to launch this review. So they will, it says basically that officials will launch this review with a nonpartisan, non-political facilitator who will continue her work with the remaining landowners and home builders. So I guess she's just going to be taking a look at the validity behind some of these, development proposals and what was swapped out. And basically, again, Ford said that lots of groups are going to be consulted. It's a complete review. It's not just the 14 lands. It's going to be 700 or 800 lands right across the board, he says.
Oh, wow.
It's going to take a little bit of time, but certainly the scope of the review is expanded. He also said, which I thought was interesting, when it comes to building housing over the next decade, he actually specifically mentioned modular homes and traditional builds. He said, we're going to go across the country to make sure that if there are modular home builders, that we bring them into Ontario. Kind of it is interesting. So, albeit that's obviously a little bit of a departure off of the Greenbelt discussion that's being had, it does kind of showcase where the government's head's at when it comes to getting homes built potentially faster and the new mechanisms that might be there to do so. But again, going back to what Ford was saying, given the controversy surrounding the Greenbelt lands and who's doing what with them. It's going to, once the review is revealed, any decisions that will be made, he said, are going to be based on, quote, merit. So I guess they're really trying to show, no favoritism has been suspected in this whole controversy. So kind of interesting too, as much as the new housing minister is obviously a large change, there's also some other cabinet shuffle positions that I think are very interesting to note. Carolyn Mulroney, who was Minister of Transportation, I believe she's now president of the Treasury Board.
Right.
And now we also have Stan Cho as Minister of Long-Term Care. So it's we have a new transportation minister. So kind of an interesting move there. It'll be interesting to see how the industry reacts to these new positions, obviously the housing minister position, but transportation is a big one for us too. So, and even long-term care in the wake of the pandemic and infrastructure with regards to that. So some new faces that we can see, probably some new ideas rolling out from them. And I'm interested to see how the industry's reacting to that, especially, you know, now that we're in September, and we'll see where things roll out as fall ramps up for us in terms of coverage. So that's the Ontario scoop of things. It's never a dull moment.
That's the big story, but that's not the only story.
No, it's not the only story. We also have Don Wall recently attended a conference, Building Transformations, it was called. It was in Toronto. And so as a result of that, he covered a panel discussion about the labor shortage, which is no shock, but it was a panel called Addressing the Labor Shortage in the Face of Growing Demand for Infrastructure. OGCA President Giovanni Cotillo was moderator. And Gio, if I didn't say your name right, I'm sorry. The other panelists were Bart Cantors of Concrete Ontario and Richard Lyle of ResCon. So what was interesting was they all kind of emphasized the need for different recruiting strategies. With Lyle saying, you know, systemic barriers are a number one issue. There's scopes of practice that are literally 50 years old, he says. So as a result of that, you kind of have to have a little bit of a modernization and you know, a change in where things are going. So definitely an interesting story that grapples with and the discussion of tackling change and how to really try to come up with different strategies for recruiting workers into what will be, you know, some people have different perceptions about construction. Some people have, you know, barriers that they just simply can't access resources. So I thought it was a great panel discussion. I look forward to you guys' feedback on it. And, you know, we can go from there.
And we have one more pretty important story that we should focus on that goes across the country.
Yeah, absolutely. September is Suicide Prevention Month. Specifically, September 10th is recognized as World Suicide Prevention Day. But the construction industry also has its own week, which is this week, you know, regarding suicide prevention. We've covered this pretty extensively in the past through our Cracks in the Foundation feature series, as we, you know, talked about mental health and substance use. Suicide inevitably kind of trickles in there, for lack of a better term, because often people are down and out and they feel, you know, they can't get out and they have thoughts of suicide. So
they
what we've
hopeless, right? Yeah,
they feel totally hopeless. So and construction is actually, you know, in North America, even across the globe. I remember there's statistics out of Australia too that showcase that suicide in construction is extremely high, similar to, you know, addiction in construction is also fairly high in the trades. So we thought we would put together as a way to recognize the month, kind of a, I guess, an initial compilation post of some of our recent coverage when it comes to mental health initiatives, suicide prevention initiatives, as well as resources that maybe people may not be aware of that they can reach out to should they feel they need help. So we've got that on our website. One of the things I thought was we reported on it earlier this year is the 988 suicide number. It's basically a national 3-digit suicide hotline that replaces a 10-digit crisis phone number. And, you know, industry stakeholders have called it a lifesaver. So I wanted to highlight that story again because it was very interesting to hear what some industry stakeholders had to say, especially because the rate of suicide among construction workers in Canada is 3 times the national average.
Wow.
So
That's
yeah,
not
great. So we throughout the month we'll probably have some more coverage, you know, North American themed, Canadian themed, and even more specific to Ontario and BC potentially too, with some initiatives that will probably be taking place throughout the month, as well as some progress that's been made. I did want to highlight in the compilation post that we have some successes that the industry's had with regards to tackling this issue, because before it was kind of like a taboo to discuss. And now I have to say, and give kudos and credit where credit is due. It's certainly something that's become more at the forefront and is discussed. And hopefully that helps rid the stigma that you can't talk about it. So, stay tuned for more coverage. But as a preliminary kickoff to Suicide Prevention Month, we decided to do kind of a collection of stories for our readers.
Okay, and with that, we're going to go into our feature interview, which is with Peter Mihalech. He's from B&B Contracting, and then with Tom Miller from LiUNA. There's a program in the Surrey School District here in BC where kids come right out of high school and they get trained and sort of filtered into the construction industry, and it's been quite a success from the sounds of things. So, but I'll let them speak to that coming up next. With me today, I have
Tom Miller, training plan administrator for LiUNA Local 1611.
Peter Mihalech, operations manager with the B&B Contracting Group.
And you've both joined me today because you've both collaborated on a sort of a program to get kids out of high school going right into the industry at Surrey School District, specifically in BC. So how did this program start? Maybe I'd start with you, Tom, because LiUNA, I guess, were the guys sort of organizing, and then B&B was implementing it.
Sure. So one of the things that I do often is when there's different community events or job fairs or things of that nature, and we're participating in it, I'm often there just because there's usually some sort of training component or questions about training or something. And so I try to make myself available to answer those questions. So I was at a trades expo in Cloverdale, and I was approached by a gentleman named Brad Edmondson, who I forget his title right now, but he kind of heads up a lot of the trades training with the Surrey School District. And essentially what he was talking to me about was that a lot of trades programs in the high school start in grades, around grade 10 or grade 11. And some kids by that age, they know, or they have an idea, they want to try a specific trade, but a lot of kids don't figure it out till they're a little bit older. And so we talked about the construction craft worker, the CCW program. And he said, look, I have some grade 12s who want to get into construction, but they found trades a little bit later. And he saw this as a bit of a fit. So I said, sounds great. We talked about timeline, they graduate, immediately come in with us, and then immediately go to work kind of thing. And when we started talking to, I think it was still the ITA at that time, it's now Skilled Trades BC. They said, this sounds like a great program, but we're only going to, provide funding if it's directly linked to employment after. So they said, okay, well, that I understand, but it can be tricky. Being a union, obviously we have supports to get people employed, but we're not an employer. We can't force somebody to get employed. So anyways, I kind of jotted down a list of a few contractors that we have a pretty good relationship with. And I thought, would be able to help us out. And Peter was actually my first phone call. B&B's helped us with a few different things over the years. And I said, look, I've got, potentially a cohort of 12 kids coming out at this time. They'll have gone through apprenticeship, but they're obviously going to be pretty green, wondering if you'd be willing to help us with this and take some of them on. And Peter said, I'll take all 12. It was my first phone call. Said he'd take all of them. Said, between holidays and their work picture and all sorts of stuff, he's like, I can use all of them. So I said, well, you just made my job pretty easy. And then we just continued on from there. That was probably, 6 to 9 months before the program, launched. I kept working out the details with Brad, just checking in with Peter. You still good? You still good? And then, we ended up launching the program in June, and there we go.
And maybe, Peter, you could explain what the program is and how these kids, well, they're not even kids anymore, they're adults by the time they go to high school, how they sort of get molded into construction workers, for lack of a better way to put it.
This program partners so well with a few other programs we do. We do a spring break work experience program with some local high schools, and this just meets so many of our expectations we're looking for in young students. They obviously graduate high school, which is it's a key thing for us. And then they do, I think, 4 to 6 weeks of 120 hours of actual school training. They learn some of the basics of the industry and safety, and learn some first aid and what a few different programs they've done with what we do. And they come into the field with a little bit of knowledge, with hopefully a lot of eagerness. And it's been a great program. They've been here now for, I think, a month and a half now, and it's been a great program so far for us, and we look forward to continuing in the future. I think B&B's been around for 75 years now. It's our 75th anniversary, and we've a growing company with 500 plus workers in the field, and I could take 12 or 25 of them if they ever get bigger. So we've got lots of opportunity in the industry, and it's just a great program. I think we all know the labor shortage out there, and getting good young people with a bit of experience and some education is great to have. So that's it's been a great program with LiUNA and B&B for sure.
Yeah, and speaking of the labor shortage, like as a news organization, we hear a lot of the bad news stories, labor shortage being one of them, like retention being another one. But it seems like these kids, from what I can tell, are really enthusiastic about getting into the trade. So maybe you could speak to that, and also to how you two, the LiUNA put out a sort of background piece, and it was all about how you two went into the trades, and it was after trying university, going, this doesn't work for me, but I'm actually getting paid more in the trades, and sort of how you got a little pushback yourselves. And do you see that with these kids?
Yeah, I mean, I think, and part of the article we talked about, university is not for everybody. And as much as I did go to university and got a degree in political science and history, and realized that, teaching that I wanted to get into, I thought I wanted to get into, wasn't for me. And you get in the industry, and my parents as well were kind of a little bit like, oh, is this what you're giving up on your education, or this education you got, is it useful? Well, I think there's no education that's bad education, but at the end of the day, there's a ton of opportunity in this industry, and that's the whole point of this. And that's where these kids, I think, realize that trades in the old days, it used to be a fallback, and now trades can be a great advantage. And there's just a ton of opportunity in our industry and all the industries. And the one thing new about this program, I'd say, it's not your traditional trade, your carpentry, your plumbing, your electrical trades. This is kind of a different trade. The civil construction industry is not your prototypical trade you see. Like I said, if you went to a local Institute of Technology, BCIT, or wherever like that, those areas, schools focus on the carpentry and the plumbing and electrical. This is a civil construction trade, a labor trade, and it's like I said, it's just a ton of opportunity in the industry and around the province right now. So it's great to see. And like I said, I've been a benefit. I've been in LiUNA for my whole career at B&B, and like I said, the partnership with the two companies, we've been partners together for a long time.
Now, Tom, I'm a member of Gen X. I'm guessing you guys are that, or elder millennials, and each of our generations took a lot of flack for not working hard enough. And I'm sure Gen Zs, people say the same thing. I don't buy it for 1 second. But I'd like to know what differences you see with the generation now that's going in. Like, what is their attitude towards the industry, and what are they looking to do once they get in?
Yeah, I mean, we found, their attitude towards the industry is pretty positive, but I'd say they just don't really know much, right? Especially what Peter touched about, like civil construction. Like, everybody hears construction, you think of vertical construction, building high rises and these different things. But a lot of what we do is, road building, utility placement, a lot of that kind of dams, tunnels, all those kinds of things. And those aren't things that necessarily translate. I mean, we found with this cohort, this is the first cohort we've ever done with like exclusively 17/18-year-olds, right? I mean, oftentimes our younger members are early 20s. They joined for various reasons, kind of thing, but we've never had a group this young. Attitude was fantastic. Their habits and everything was really, really good. The one thing that my instructors told me, it just was a little bit more difficult to get them engaged at times. Everything is so, with technology and phones and all these kinds of things, everything's so instantaneous now. And just some of the engagement stuff was a little bit trickier. It was also, all the students didn't come from one school. They came from a district. So they didn't really, some of them knew each other, but for the most part, they didn't know each other either. So it takes time to get people to bond and participate and that sort of thing. But in terms of attitude, in terms of their questions, stuff like that, it was all really, really positive. And a lot of the things you might think was just from them being completely green. I wouldn't say it's because they're just green and young, right? It's what you'd expect. When we started talking to them about, like, I said, I'm not 100% on B&B because every company is different, but oftentimes in this industry, you don't take a lunch break. You take 2 coffee breaks, and you got to make sure you have your food with you because you're not always going to be close to somewhere to get food.
Right.
The weather and all those kinds of things. Those are a bit eye-opening, and I'm sure, Peter probably, got some feedback about that kind of stuff. But
probably, yeah.
Other than that, it was very, very positive, very positive. And the kids were very smart, like killed it. And like I said, great habits, showed up on time, and all that kind of stuff. So it was very positive for us.
Yeah, Peter, what were your experiences in
Yeah,
those terms?
I'd echo a lot of that. I mean, I think at the end of the day, all these students have a very good, positive attitude. They're very eager. Lots of questions, which is good. I mean, we always encourage questions. If you don't know something, you better off to ask than just assume. So they've had lots of different questions. We as a company, we're a fairly diverse company, so we've tried to move them around, and it's our job to put them in positions to succeed. And they all have different niches and different interests, so we try to work them around the company for the first 6 months, and then they try to gravitate to one sort of discipline that we have, whether it's pipelaying or road building or our camera divisions or gas divisions, whatever they feel the most comfortable in. We try to facilitate that. Travel too. We work we work across the Lower Mainland, so some of them are thinking that they're going to show up at the office every day and this is where they work. Well, no, it's job sites are varied, but all in all, it's been a very positive experience for us. I think it's great for some of our older employees to have some youth come through the ranks, especially with such a positive attitude, and have a bit of education behind them as well, so they know a little bit. It's been a great program so far.
And I guess my next and probably final question would be, where do you go next after this? Like, do you bring in more students? Is there plans to do that, or was this a one-off event, or do you have like sort of a master plan that you're going to go by?
So we ran this, excuse me, when I talked to Brad with Surrey Schools, we ran this as a pilot because both sides didn't really know what to expect. Like I said, this has been a really good experience all the way from beginning to end. We want to run it again. I met with Brad a couple of weeks ago. Our goal is definitely to do it again in June because it works well with them graduating and coming immediately into it. Now, he's part of a committee of about 80 people in the industry, a lot of trades coordinators, contractors, stuff like that, and they meet, I don't know if it's quarterly or what, but he said in the winter he'd like to have me come do a little mini presentation about the program kind of thing and how it went, because he thinks there would definitely be support from potentially Langley and Delta and some of these other districts that kind of do things with Surrey. So we want to continue to do it. If we can gain traction and we have contractors like Peter and others that'll take these students on, we'll keep spitting them out there. Our only real issue is potentially if they all want it on this exact same timeline where they all want it immediately upon graduation. I just don't have the capacity to run like 5 cohorts all at the same time, right? So, but that's really the only issue. Otherwise, if I've got jobs for them available after, and the schools can keep giving us, interested, engaged kids that want to do this, then we'll keep doing it. And from the contractor's point of view, Peter, what do you think?
Like I said, we hope they continue to run it. It partners well. We do a 2-week spring break program where we offer employment, take resumes from local schools and give them a 2-week trial and into the industry, and it works well for that, and just partners so well. I think this program is better because they have a little more schooling and they're all graduated that time, so they kind of know, okay, now I'm joining the workforce. So we're all for that. Like I said, we're for any sort of innovative ways to get new young labor into the industry, and especially to our company on a selfish level. But we're all for sponsoring these types of things, and I think as we talked about earlier, the labor shortage is here and probably not going away, and especially as us, we're trying to grow our business. We need that young, energetic workforce to continue our be successful in the industry. And it's like I said, this just partners so well with us, and we hope LiUNA and other unions we work with continue to do these types of programs because they are just so beneficial to our company, and also I think beneficial to the young workforce, where those kids that don't want to do post-secondary education, there's an outlet for them to be successful. And these guys come out with a successful career working for a large company, making good money in a union with good benefits, and can start building their career and building their life.
And finally, Tom, if people are interested, like young people or contractors who want to be involved, like where should they go to get info on it?
I mean, the best way is probably just to go to our website. So it's liuna1611.ca, I believe. Sorry, we've changed some websites and emails and stuff, but that's probably the best place to go. If they just Google LiUNA, there's all sorts of contacts there and they can contact training, and I can definitely reach out to them and ask. Follow social media pages. We constantly post stuff about this kind of stuff. And if anybody puts in an inquiry into any Facebook feeds or whatever, our communications person always contacts me or somebody else to reach out to them. So social media pages, website, that's probably the easiest way.
Okay, great. Thanks for joining us today, gentlemen.
Thanks for having us. I appreciate it very much.
Thank you, Peter.
And that's it for this episode of the Construction Record Podcast. If you'd like to hear our recent 300th episode with myself and Vince Versace, or any of our other episodes, you can hear them on Amazon Music, Apple Music, and Spotify, or on the Daily Commercial News and Journal of Commerce websites. Thanks for listening.